Then my stepdad had a chat with me. He called me when I was like 16. He was like, Wally, come, come. Have you been having sex? Hey guys, what's going on? Yeah, so one of the things that you'll hear me talk about quite a bit in my stand up and in my general material is sex. And for the first, I don't know, maybe a few years of my career, I didn't talk about sex. I wanted to honor God and I wanted to be, um, I guess, I didn't want to necessarily go down the crude route or, whatever it was that even though my favorite comedians seem to be quite free, I didn't want to. And then one day I wrote a joke about not having sex before marriage. And that was the day it hit me that, like, hold on a second. This is a really good joke, first of all. But second of all, like, there's a perspective on sex that I need to be able to bring as a Christian. I'm coming from a unique point of view here. And just because I'm not necessarily talking about it in the same way as most of my peers in the comedy club, like, I still have a point of view that's interesting for most people that, like, okay, let me see what this guy has to say about trying to not have sex. Um, and the crazy thing is that sometimes you can get into this idea of like behaving so pure and clean that if you really check your real life you actually aren't, and that was where I was. So I started talking about it, and one of the reasons I talked about it was because I hate the fact that we today most of the time are getting all of our knowledge from terrible places are teaching us about sex. You're very rarely hearing about sex from somebody who has a good grip on it, no pun intended. But like most of the time you're getting it from your peers who have weird and terrible experiences. You're getting it from the internet, which, as we all know, is a weird and wild place. Um, Other forms of media, insinuations, magazines, all terrible places to learn about sex. So, one thing that's always bothered me is that those who are Christians or those who claim to want what's good in the world, um, in an attempt to be clean, avoid talking about sex as if sex is inherently dirty, which it isn't. Um, so I'm often very upfront and I'm very matter of fact with what I say about sex, just because like I need somebody to know that like sex is fantastic. Praise the Lord. Sex is fantastic. I believe there's a context for sex. And I believe that the ideal context that God created it for is within marriage. But the truth is, before people even get there, they're already experiencing sex. Then you get to marriage, you try and unlearn a whole bunch of stuff that you already learned. And it's crazy. It's crazy that we do it that way around. Even churches want to they want to get the teenagers together and have a loose discussion about sex when from like 12 they've already figured out most of the stuff you're trying to tell them. They don't trust you. They don't believe in you. You don't know what's up. Then you get married and the church wants to do couples counseling or like, you know, some couples away sex convention. Ooh. My church, they call it taking a flight to Jerusalem. I'm like, we grown folks. We can't say sex. And then by that point, you done learn 10 years worth of stuff about sex. And you trying to unlearn it in a weekender? That doesn't make any sense. We like so reactive rather than being proactive when it talks about sex. That's the reason why I'm very frank. I'm frank about my struggles with porn. I'm frank about, enjoying sex. I'm frank about the fact that sex happens and exists outside of how I may believe God has created it for us. It doesn't make you any more Christian to pretend that it only happens in marriage. It doesn't. So why not address it? I'm not saying endorse it. I'm not, if you don't believe that it should happen outside of marriage, I'm not saying you should endorse it, but I'm saying that like speak to it, acknowledge it, talk about why it happens. Be honest. Be honest about whether you had sex before you were married. My sex talk when I was coming up didn't happen with my mum. Then my stepdad had a chat with me. He called me when I was like 16. He was like, Wally, come, have you been having sex? I said, no, Dad. He said, why not? Yes, it's good. It's good. I had my first sex when I was 14, and I was just standing there the whole time, like, then when you can't even say apostle will hear of this because he was an apostle in the church. I was asking myself, like, when am I going to have like a real honest discussion about this? I had uncles who put me on game and told me what was up, but nothing really spoke to the life I was trying to live. Like I had real experiences and real stories to learn from, but nothing really like guided me along the way. All the uncles even that wanted to tell me to wait or whatever it is, most of them I ask them, did you wait? And they'd be like, no, I made mistakes, but you don't need to make the same mistakes I made. I'm like, let me make my mistakes and enjoy them like you did, and then turn my life to Jesus somewhere down the line. And that's not helpful, but that's how I felt because I didn't feel like anyone was being honest. Anyone was giving me the real. So if you hear me talking about sex, you're like, oh, but Allah's a Christian. Why is he talking like this? I'm talking like this because someone needs to. Someone needs to. Why you lot are dancing around the issue and shying away from it? Everyone you're trying to reach or speak to or try and offer some real wisdom about sex is learning everything that you're going to try and hope they unlearn one day. Why not just give them the real from the beginning? Why not just sit someone down and tell them, look, I know you're not going to believe me, but trust me, the best sex happens in marriage. It happens within a framework in which you trust each other completely, you're committed to one another, and you can truly be free with your body with one another. Let your commitment match your intimacy. Let it not be that you're overexposed in terms of intimacy with little commitment. That's a recipe for heartbreak. Wait, don't worry, it's going to be fantastic. And sex isn't a performance sport, so don't worry about your husband or your wife being bad in bed. It's about learning each other. When is someone going to give you that real honest thing and tell you, but look, I also, when you have it outside of sex, it feels fantastic. But there are real downsides to it. It's going to hurt you in future relationships sometimes. You're going to get your heart broken sometimes. Some spiritually, it might mess you up. Like be honest about all the different eventualities and scenarios. That's my approach to things. I don't know. You tell me what's your thoughts. What's your thoughts? How do we approach sex in today's day and age? Your children are going to learn way more than you could ever imagine before you ever have a chance to speak to them about it or teach them about it. So you need to be proactive as well. What do you think? Say something in the comments. Let me know. Stay blessed, guys.